Welcome to another edition of the Buyer's Guide. In this edition we are going to be looking at a ground bait that's been around for years and years and years. However, lots of people are still not aware of it and they're still not quite sure about when and how to use it. The mix we're going to be looking at is the Dynamite baits Frenzied Hempseed ground bait, but in this particular edition we're going to be looking at the match black version. Well, I'm sure lots and lots of people are more than familiar with Dynamite baits, ground baits. There's a huge range of baits in their range, and this particular one is one that's been around for years and years and years. It's one that I'm only aware of from when I was fishing natural venues. It's the match black version, and it's the one that we tend to use when waters and water clarity is a little bit clearer. That's certainly the time when we've used it, but it's also a way of adding a little bit of activity to any existing mix that you're using as well. Now, the main application that we've used this particular mix in has kind of been on venues like in Ireland and lots of the natural venues that we fish over here in England. We tend to use it when we add it to other mixers, so it could be other ground baits within the Dynamite range, or it could be other mixers from other brands. And because it's so dark and fine, you can actually use it to add a little bit of activity to a mix. So if you want to target fish like roach and perch, and you want a mix where there are little bits of particles coming off it, then it's a great addition to one of your other mixers that you're using. And because it's so dark as well, you can use it to darken down or tone down any other mix that you're using as well. So from personal experience, the main time we've used this is when we've kind of been using it in the sort of 20% ratio that we've added to another mix to either darken it down or liven up the mix that we're already currently using. So first things first, let's have a look at the packaging and let's just see what that's going to tell us about the mix. Now, like I say, these are in 1 kilo bags. Okay, so this is a bag that, I'll be absolutely honest with you, this particular bag I've actually had in my stock now for almost a year, and that is because I know exactly when I bought the last batch of this ground bait, and it was for the World Pairs in Ireland just before we went out there last September. So this has still got the price tag on there. As you can see, it looks a little bit aged, £4.25, so that's giving away the actual cost of the bag. Well, that's how much I paid for it this time last year. Distinctive packaging as always. It's got the Dynamite baits logo on there. A little bit about the mix itself. Contains all the irresistible attraction of hemp seed. We all know how attractive hemp can be in its various shapes and forms on a wide variety of venues, and that's what this mix is all about. Carp, chub, roach, bream, barbel and tench. Quite a wide range of species there. That's what hemp is all about, you know. Fish love hemp, simple as that. This is the Frenzied Hempseed ground bait range, but be careful, if this is one that you're looking for, look for the match black sticker on there, okay, because there are two other versions in this range. On the back it does detail them for you, but I'll tell you a little bit about those in a moment. So you've got the main Frenzied Hempseed logo on there, and we've got a window in the packaging which shows us how incredibly fine and dark this mix is. Okay, so that's giving you a great insight into what it's like. And then we've got the confirmation there that it's a 1 kilo bag. Okay, so flip it over. We've got a little bit about the range itself. Frenzied Hemp ground bait, so that's referring to the range itself. A range of ground baits developed using the best selling Frenzied Hempseed, which proves irresistible to all species of fish. So it's very much an all-round kind of ground bait. Okay, now we've got details here of the 3 different ground baits within the range, and if I hold that just there for you, you can obviously pause the video to read more about each one. So there is a specimen mix, so there's a specimen version of this ground bait. There's the match original. Now, as the name suggests, it's intended for match fishing, okay, which is catching all species, but original, and the word original generally tends to mean the actual colour, so it's a natural colour, you know, like the more consistent brown type lighter coloured mix. And then at the bottom there we've got this particular version in a little bit more detail there, which is the match black. Okay, so if I put that there, you can read that at your leisure. Now, down here in the fine print, it looks like there's some form of a batch number, and that is 06/20/22. Okay, but like I say, I've had this in stock a year, so there's a long shelf life on them. So what I'm going to do now is, as always in this series, I'm going to open this up, just kind of tell you what it smells like, and we're going to mix it up. I'm going to put it through the sieve, we're going to mix it up, see if there is any feed in here, see whether it retains its darkness and its blackness, and then we're going to pop it in the tank in a cage feeder and have a look at how it performs underwater. So here we go. Now, like I say, as always in this series, we normally would mix ground baits in a round bowl. Okay, so there we go, but for filming purposes I'm actually doing this in a rectangular bowl. So we are going to get some dry bits in the corner and stuff, but like I said, good practice is to always mix your ground baits in a round bowl if you can. Okay, right, hemp. That is all hemp. That's such a strong smell of hemp. So I mean, that's what it's all about. Okay, and that's strong now, you know, and that is obviously going to get stronger when we mix it. So there are a few little bits of feed on this sieve, so let me get rid of those, because we want a true reflection of what the mix is like. So there you go, see how dark that is. That is, well, it's black, simple as that. Okay, and I'm going to push that, or sieve it through for you, so this will highlight if there is any feed in there. No, nothing. Well, a couple of tiny little bits in there, tiny bits, literally. Well, you can see there's nothing there. There's a couple of tiny little pieces of hemp shell, it looked like. Okay, but as you can see, there's nothing there, so there's no feed in it. That's why it's ideal for when the conditions are harder, winter time, clearer water. It's when we're just kind of toning things down, and that's the main time when we've used it. So we'll get rid of the sieve. That sieve, for people that are interested, is either 2.5 mil or 3 mil. It's thereabouts, just to give you an idea of how fine that is. There we go, so you can see how dark that is. Okay, so let's get some mixed up. This is going to give us an idea of how it mixes up. And just like I always say in this series, I'm not using a drill. Whenever you mix ground baits with a drill and a whisk, it does tend to give them a really even consistency straight away. You know, quite often when you're using a drill, you don't need a sieve, but most people don't carry a drill and a whisk. Most people mix their ground bait by hand, and this series is all about you, and it's all about keeping things as realistic as what they would be if you were going to use them. So that's why I'm mixing this by hand. So there are going to be some lumps in here because I'm mixing it by hand, and I'm mixing it in a rectangular bowl as well, but that's fine. We always put it through a sieve anyway. Well, there we go. Okay, so the first thing that's come to mind is that smell of hemp has got stronger. Okay, obviously you can't smell that, but it's definitely got stronger as we've added water to it. Now, this is a kind of mix where you can mix it dry, and if you mix it dry, you're probably going to get it a lot more active than what it would be if you was to overwet it or fish with it damp. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this as a medium consistency, but just a bit of word of warning with this mix: you can mix it really dry, that will make it active. Okay, so if that's the effect that you're after with this sort of mix, and that's what you want to do, or add it to your mix to make your existing mix more active, mix it dry. Okay, but you can fish with it slightly damp as well, which is how we've really used it when we've been fishing in deeper waters in Ireland and on natural reservoirs. So it is a flexible mix in that sense. Okay, and when I say we fished with it in Ireland, we fished it with it on the feeder and the pole as well. You know, when you're going over there, you know, you've got to take at least about 4 kilo of ground bait to your peg, because if it is going to be a feeder match, then that's great. You know, obviously you won't use all that, or normally you wouldn't use all that in a feeder match, you know, because you don't need that much. But if it is a pole fishing day and the fish are wanting a ball of chuck, you know, where you're literally putting a small ball of ground bait in every cast, then that's when you've got to make sure you've got to have all that ground bait with you. You don't want to be carrying a feeder mix and a pole mix if you can help it, otherwise that means you've got 8 kilos of ground bait there that you've got to cart to your peg with all the rest of your kit. So a mix like this is very versatile, that you can use it on the feeder and on the pole as well, and that's why it's great. It's, you know, it's really suited for festivals like that, when you don't really know what it's going to be like, where you're going to draw and how it's going to fish. So there you can see, really dark mix. Okay, I'm not going to mix any more water with that. Okay, and what I will show you is, as you can see on my fingers, there's a little bit of stickiness there. Okay, it's not oil. You can probably tell my hands aren't shining, so it's not like an oily mix. Okay, but there's a little bit of stickiness there, so that means it's going to bind well, and like I said, that's why it can be great for pole fishing as well. And as you can see, there's a little bit of darkness come off on my fingers. There we go. But look, there isn't any there actually on the bowl itself. Okay, so there's no blackness. Some ground baits you'll find the dark black ground baits, there will be some of the dye that will come off onto the tub itself. Okay, and there isn't any that's come off there, so that's good to see, because I like dark mixes, black mixes that are going to retain the darkness. Okay, so that's it. As with every other video in this series, we are going to give this exactly 20 minutes to rest. Okay, I might have to add a little bit more water to it, and if I do, that's great. I mean, that's expected. 20 minutes, usually in a match I'd like to leave this at least an hour if possible, and usually when you get to your peg, if you mix it straight away, you've got time to do that. So mix it so it's got an hour to rest, so it's absorbed enough water. But all I'm going to do is give this 20 minutes, put it back through a sieve, and then we're going to see how it's going to perform underwater. Well, that's been exactly 20 minutes now. I've had to add a little bit more water, but not much at all, because I want this in a medium kind of consistency, just so you're going to get a true reflection of what it's like. But as you can see, there aren't too many lumps there on first sight. To say we've mixed this with by hand in a rectangular tub, there aren't many lumps in there at all, but as always, we always put it through a sieve anyway. So let's pop that onto the sieve. I'll push that through, shake that through for you. There we go. A few lumps there. Don't throw those away. Okay, ground bait can work out expensive. Well, fishing can work out expensive enough as it is without throwing those lumps away. There's nothing wrong with those lumps. All it is, they've got a little bit more water, a little bit more moisture in them than the rest of the mix. So just push them through. Okay. If they'd been hard particles of feed, you could probably hear them rubbing against the actual sieve itself. Okay, but there you go, everything's gone through, no feed there. Okay, so we've got a lovely dark mix there. Okay, not too dry, not too wet, you know, alright, it's just a medium consistency. Now next thing we're going to do is just see if we can over wet it. Okay, so let's just put a little bit into this corner here where you can see it. Over wetting ground bait can be very effective, and if it does overwet, okay, it just gives you another application, another way of using the ground bait. Okay, like I say, sometimes in Ireland and all these natural venues you're fishing a whip as well. Wet ground bait or overwet ground bait can be a great way of building up nets of small fishing or with roach and that sort of thing. And if this allows you to do that, then again it means you haven't got to carry a separate mix, if that could be a way that you potentially could be fishing in a match. So it means you're having one mix that can do lots of different things. So there you go, that's overwetted fine. Okay, not going to overwet it too much, but that's fine. You could, in fact, let's do it. Let's see how it really goes into a slop. There we go, look at that. And again, there's nothing coming off actually onto the bowl itself. Okay, there's nothing coming off on my hands, so it's retaining all that darkness, which is brilliant. So again, that's another way of using this mix. So let's see how it's going to perform in the tank. So as with every video in this series, we're going to be testing it in the tank with the same feeder. This is a new Matrix side weighted cage feeder. Great feeder for, you know, the vast majority of the fishing that I do on still waters, and this has got really fine wire mesh to it, so that means that's going to allow the water chance to get straight to the ground bait. So I'm going to squeeze this in. I'm going to squeeze it into a medium consistency, or medium pressure if you want to call it that. So I haven't packed it in, and it's not just loose, it's just normal how you would have it normally to kick off a session. Okay, so I'm going to pop this in the tank and let's see how it's going to perform underwater. Pop that in the middle of the shot for you. There we go. So straight away you can see there's some activity coming off it now. There's quite a few bubbles coming out of there. Like I say, by putting this through a sieve, you automatically put some air into the mix, but you can see the activity coming off it now. You can see, I've set it up so you can just see the surface of the water in the shot, so you can see how much bait's actually come off and risen to the top. Now like I say, this has only had 20 minutes to rest. Normally I would have given it at least an hour, but by mixing it drier you can actually increase and enhance that activity. Okay, just on the flip side of that, if you want to decrease the activity and just make it a little bit more inert, then you can add a little bit more water and make it damper. But as you can see, After that initial burst, it has gone a little bit quiet now. So when that feeder went in for the first minute, you've got some feed coming off there which has gone to the surface. So there are quite a few coming up. In fact, they are coming up to the surface now. As more of the ground bait is breaking down from either side of the feeder, you can see that there are particles coming up to the top. Now if I'd rested this a little bit longer, that activity may have been less, but like I said, I could have mixed this even drier and that would have enhanced that activity. But as you can see, there's no cloud as such, so there's no cloud coming off it. There's not much of a spread there as well. The ground bait's just kind of melting away a little bit around the feeder, and that really is, after, you know, a minute and a half, 2 minutes, that's really kind of finished. You know, I'm sure there are still dry particles that are left in the center of that ground bait that if we were to move the feeder, they would come to the top, but it's just giving it that initial burst of activity. It's really dark, there's no black haze around it. What you can often see with some dark mixers like this is that some of the dye comes out of the ground bait itself, and when you're looking at the ground bait underwater like you are doing now, then you can see a black haze, and it's almost the dye that's coming out of it into the water. There isn't any of that. That is just the dark mix, you know, and that's why this mix is so popular, because the darkness is actually retained within the mix itself. It's not like when you've added a dye that can wash out or come off onto your hands or into the bowl. Some dark ground baits, when you mix them in a bowl or a bucket, it actually makes the bucket, it goes dark, you know, because the dye is coming out of it. As you can see, that's not the case with this mix. Brilliant. What I'll do is I'll just pop a lightly squeezed ball just next to it in the shot for you, just so you can see how that performs underwater as well. Almost floated then. That's how light that is. That's how much air I've put into it just by putting it through that sieve. But there you go, look how quick that's breaking down, and look how much stuff's coming off it. Loads of feed particles coming off that. That's where your activity comes from. That's when you can draw fish into your peg. You know, sometimes you want to kick off a session doing that to draw some fish into the peg, to try and get them, just to let them know there's some feed there and that the feeder's going in. You might not be able to do that all day, because, you know, sometimes you just want that initial, because you don't want fish following all that activity out of the peg, certainly in deep water, or if it's towing, you know, then that can draw fish out of your peg. So to initially kickstart your swim, or to try and regroup the fish as well, that's why this kind of a mix can be brilliant for just kind of initially getting some fish into your peg. And that's broken down already. That ball of ground bait is just a mound of ground bait. Fantastic. So what I'm going to do now is just move the feeder out of the tank, and this will tell us and show us how and what sort of a cloud we're going to get off it. Well, there we go. That's a really big cloud. I didn't expect that, but it is quite a heavy cloud, if that makes sense. If you have a look at the shot, the top half of the shot, there's not very little up there anyway. It has disturbed some more particles which are going up to the top. As you can see, they're rising, but the darkness has really stayed really low down in the tank. Okay, so it's not kicked up a big cloud that's up in the water and is at all depths. As you can see, it's mainly down in that lower, or that bottom half, which is great to see. Fantastic. Well, it's, you know, it's a very popular mix. It's one that we've used a lot of. Like I say, I can't honestly think of an occasion when I've used it on its own. However, if I was fishing some of the canals and some slightly different venues, and certainly not always feeder fishing, if I was pole fishing as well, I can see applications where you'd use this actually on its own, but the majority of the time when we've used it is when we've added it to other mixers. Okay, we've added it to other Dynamite mixers, but we have added it to mixers in from other brands as well. Now these are 1 kilo bags, and checking the price of them today on the internet, generally the price, or the more common price that I've seen, is £4.45. Okay, however, as you saw by the sticker on that bag, I paid £4.25 for it. They may fluctuate up and down the country. Now, stockists, Dynamite baits tend to have stockists all over the country. You know, they're a really well established bait company that have lots of stockists up and down the country. If you don't know where your nearest one is, on the Dynamite Baits website there is a store locator. Okay, so if you find a mix that you like, at the bottom of that same page there is a store locator. You can simply type in your postcode or the postcode of where you are located, and that will give you a list, and it will show you on a map where your nearest stockists are. So hope you've enjoyed having a look at this mix. It's one that's been around for a long time, and it's certainly one that I know for a fact that, you know, a lot of people and the veterans they're fishing, that this kind of a mix could really enhance some of their sport. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this insight. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to hit subscribe to see all my future videos and past videos. And if you want to watch the next video in this series, that's just there for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.